our producers to turn off their microphones and their cameras. Thank you.
Okay, shall I get started?
Susan, take it away.
I'm going to have a quick word. Andy, I'm sorry that you can't see me. I'm having a technical issue with my video on this side. I'm also taking a kind of a slow start to the webinar because we often have people joining a little bit late in the beginning. Andy Nobes from INASP is somebody that AJOL has been fortunate enough to work with on and off for the past decade. We are very excited to have him be a guest speaker in the webinar today. It's been a long time for Dr. Van Zyl to manage to pin him down because he's a busy man. Andy Nobes' expertise is in assisting early career researchers in low and middle income countries. And to that end, he has been instrumental in co-designing various online courses and in-person training courses. And through that, has trained 40,000 researchers in 135 countries around the world. So we truly are very lucky to have him with us today to give us some insights and helpful tips in how to spot deceptive or problematic journals. And thank you very much, Andy, for your time. I'm sure it's going to be interesting, and if I know you at all, entertaining as well. So please go ahead with your presentation and sharing your screen. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Susan. Yes, I hope I can make this as entertaining as possible. Right, well, thank you very much for having me. It's always great to interact with AJOL and the team because I just think that AJOL is such an important platform for researchers in Africa to know about. And so I've tried to mention it a few times in this presentation, but I'm sure you're all aware of the great work that AJOL are doing. I'm going to share some slides to start with. I'm going to try to interact with you using Menti, which is inserted in the slides at various points. And please do put any questions you have in the chat, because hopefully we will have good time for a Q&A. And it's always good to hear your perspectives and your experiences on this thing called predatory journals. I don't want to make it out as if I am the expert on this, because there are many people experiencing the edges of journal publishing are all around the world right now, and so it'd be really interesting to hear what your thoughts are on this as we go through. Right, let's see if I can remember again how to share. Right, do let me know if this doesn't appear on your screen. So you should see a colorful slide with a silly AI generated picture. Let me know if you can't.
We see it.
All good.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Right, so this presentation is going to be called Avoiding Predatory Publishers and Identifying Suitable Journals. So it's not just about sort of focusing entirely on what these predatory journals are, but it's all about thinking of how can you find the right journal? How can you find a suitable journal for your important research? You don't want your research to be lost in some obscure place. Oh, I've got a timer on my slides. You don't want your research to be lost in some obscure place where nobody's going to read it, or a place where people would think that doesn't sound like a very credible journal to me. So journal selection is really important. So before I go on to that, I want to talk about the platform that I work for. As Susan mentioned, I've been involved in training a very large number of researchers over the last 10 years or so. It's not all me. I only play a minor role in all this. So the platform that I'm involved in, it used to be called AuthorAid. It's now called Rising Scholars. So if you go to risingscholars.net, you can find out all about our online courses and blogs and videos and mentoring. So please do check out Rising Scholars. So I'm going to summarize my 4 main tips on how to avoid predatory publishing. These are I think the main 4 ways that you can avoid it entirely. This is going to kind of categorize the upcoming presentation really. So for me, the ways to avoid predatory publishing is to understand the different models of open access, really understand what options you have for publishing and what open access means. Only pay to publish if you really need to. So understand that there are ways for you to publish which don't involve paying a fee. Know the journals in your field is really important. And also, if you do need to use lists or indexes, understand what the best known journal indexes are. So use well-known journal indexes as quality markers. So I'll come on into in a minute about what predatory publishing actually is. But first, I wanted to get some views from you and also find out more about you. So if you could go to menti.com, and when you get there, use the code 34056955. So menti.com and 34056955. Actually, I've got a link for that somewhere, so I will share that in the chat box now because it's quite important. And I will be sharing it again at various points of this presentation. So if you let me find that, and I will pop it into the chat box. So I did have it to hand, 1 second. Right, let's go back to page. Right, so sorry, in the chat box, here is the link. That's the full link to get to the Menti. And back to the presentation. And right, so the first question is, where are you based? So this is menti.com 34056955. I can see a few you're joining already. There's always a slight delay as we work out how to use technology. Even after all these years, I still get confused with PowerPoint slides and Mentimeter. So where are you based? So a large contingent, as expected, in South Africa. Also have quite a few people in Kenya, and one possibly at the moment in Malawi. It looks like we have lots of South Africans with us today. Let's give it another moment to see if there are any others joining the Menti. I'll leave time for one more person. Oh, it looks like another South African has entered as well, and another Malawian. But maybe we'll come back to that as we go along and see who else we've got here. So we're very African at the moment, which is great. So that's, oh, and somebody from Ghana. Welcome to our one Ghanaian so far. Good to have you all here. So the next question, and you can go through, you can start working through these in your own time actually on the Menti. Strangely, that's grayed out. Okay, so have you had any experience with predatory journals? Have you had any experience? So perhaps you've heard of them, but you don't know what they are. Perhaps you've received emails from them and you're conscious of that. Perhaps you've nearly published with them, or perhaps you have published in a predatory journal. When I've done this presentation in the past, there have been a couple of people with some really interesting experiences of actually having published in a slightly dodgy journal, and they weren't sure what to do. So it looks like we're receiving lots of emails, which isn't surprising. I think everyone that's involved in academia around the world now will be receiving emails with very colourful wording inviting you as a prestigious professor to submit your esteemed research to their journal. So it sounds like we kind of know sort of about what the phenomenon is. So 3 of you are saying, I've heard of them, but you don't know what they are. So that's absolutely fine. So we will hopefully clarify that in this presentation. Next question is, how experienced are you in publishing your research? I wanted to get a general idea of what the level of experience we have here. Oh, we have a nice balance. We have people with no experience, and we have some very experienced people with 10+ publications. So maybe we will draw on their expertise later in this session. Because I would like to ask you as a group what your tips are for publishing and what your tips are for sort of identifying good and bad journals. So we should hopefully be able to collaborate on what we think the best practices are. Thank you very much for completing those. And so there's some people here with no experience. That's great. So this is a really good time to talk about what we mean by predatory journals, so that you're aware of how to avoid this rather strange phenomenon. Just wanted to go back and see if we had. I got somebody from Tanzania. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got East, West, and Southern Africa represented here today. Right, so we will continue using Menti later. So feel free to keep going through the questions if you like. We will come to that discussion later. So, what on earth do we mean by a predatory journal? So, I have been defining it, and others have defined this also. I tend to think of it as a low-quality publishing outlet that charges you a fee to upload your research to the internet, but doesn't actually provide any kind of professional service that you should expect from an academic journal, really. It's putting your research on the internet, but not really doing any of the things you'd expect from an academic journal. So it's kind of false advertising, really. And predatory journals, they've emerged from the open access movement and from really the commercialization of open access, which we'll get to in a bit. And so this is why I think it's really important to understand what open access is and how it works, and what options you have as a brand new researcher or as an experienced researcher. So it's really important to understand the different models of open access. So we've got these crazy things called hybrid, green, gold, diamond, that every researcher now has to kind of have a grasp of what they mean, because if you understand these, you will be able to find ways that really fit your approach and your strategy to getting published in the best place for your research. So I'm sure we are all familiar with the concept of a journal paywall, where you find some research that's really interesting or it's relevant to your work, and you can't access it because you have to pay to access it. So for this kind of publishing, if you want to publish in a journal that's not open, that has a paywall behind it, as an author, whilst you may have to pay to access the research, you don't actually usually have to pay to publish your research in a subscription journal. It's the readers that pay, and so it's usually library subscriptions and universities that actually pay for the access. This account I've put down here, this is approximately 50% of peer-reviewed literature, but actually it's going down and down and down. But for this, it's important to note, for this model of publishing, you don't have to pay a fee as an author. If you're submitting and publishing in a closed access journal, you're not paying a fee, except in some circumstances where you pay for like a color figure or something like that, or if you're pay for a particular number of pages if you have a really long piece of work. So you can pay in one of these closed access journals, but you still also have options. If you want to share your research beyond paywalls to like the public or policymakers, there is something coming up which we call green open access. So even though your paper is behind a paywall, you can share it by self-archiving it publicly. Right, and then we have something called a hybrid journal, and this confuses a lot of people, but basically what this means is it's a closed access journal, but as an author, you have the option of making your paper open. So the journal may have like 5 articles which you have to pay to read, and it might have 5 articles which are open access, and you as an author have to pay a fee to make that particular article open, and the costs are quite high, around $3,000 or $4,000 or even much more to actually get published in these journals. And these journals tend to be quite prestigious, so-called high impact journals with good reputation. But you may be eligible for a waiver or a discount on that fee, on that article processing charge. So article processing charges is really important to understand. Some of you will be very aware of them, but we also need to be aware that there may be options to get those charges discounted. It's not always particularly easy, but it is possible. And then we've got something called an open access journal. This is often called gold open access. Again, it's free to read, but you have to pay to publish. So the whole journal is open access, but all of the authors usually may have paid a fee to publish their papers in that journal. And again, we're talking about thousands of dollars to do that. I know I've called this commercial open access journal. So journals who they make their money, they are sustainable because they charge a fee to the author. And this is what most people understand as open access publishing. Oh, you can't quite see that there. And again, I said you may be eligible for a waiver or a discount on that fee if you're in certain low or middle income countries. Probably not South Africa or Kenya, but more so Malawi and Tanzania. But it just depends on which country you're in. And then you have something called well, a diamond open access journal. So this is a journal which is completely open access to both read and to publish in. And so as an author, you pay no fee to publish in those journals. And these are still good quality journals. They are credible. They run peer review. There's no evidence to suggest that this diamond open access is any different in terms of publishing quality to a gold open access journal. So there's no charge for authors to publish. There's lots of examples of this on the directory of open access journals, DOAJ. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, something called green open access is very often misunderstood. Basically what this means is you deposit a version of your peer-reviewed paper in a repository on a website, on somewhere such as Archive or Africa Archive, or PubMed, or even on a personal website, or the repository at your university. And you can do that for free without a fee. You have to check the terms and conditions of your journal, but I think more or less all journals should allow you to do this. There might be a period of time called an embargo period where you have to wait in order to do this, but it is an option. If you have to publish in a journal and it's closed access, or you can't afford a fee and you have to publish in that journal, but you want to make your research open, you do have options to post a version, a final peer-reviewed version, in a repository to share with people. So that was me doing a very, very quick run through of what open access publishing means. There are lots of nuances and other things to know about it, but we don't really have time to sort of go through the whole situation with open access. But I wanted to focus on the fact that you don't always have to pay to publish, and you certainly don't always have to pay to publish open access unless you really need to, or your funder requires you to, or your discipline means that you have to publish in certain high impact journals. But most of the time there should be options for you which are free to you as an author. Now this, I'll mention this again briefly. If you do need to pay article processing charges, there may be options for you to get them waived or to get them discounted, particularly if you're in a what we're calling Hanari List A or List B country, which is mostly low and middle income countries. It's always worth asking to see if you can get a discount on this. Your university may also have an agreement with the publisher whereby they've paid for the journal access, and so they will let researchers at those institutions publish in those journals for free. So always check to see if you have to pay an article processing charge, see if there are any other options for you to get that discounted. So if you do need to pay for open access, it's really important to know that you should be getting something really quite special for this service. If you're paying hundreds and thousands of dollars to a journal, or pounds to a journal, you should be publishing to a journal with a good reputation, with a good readership, because that's what you want your research to do. Reach a broad range of people in your discipline, and also probably broader stakeholders than that. You want rigorous peer review. I think some of us probably don't want rigorous peer review, but we have to have it. It's good for your research. You should expect good quality of peer review. The publishing quality of your journal should be good. There should be a permanent record, an archive just in case the website goes down. It should be good digital infrastructure, not just some poor quality websites. And it should be indexed in some way, and we'll come to that again in a moment. So this is what you should be getting for your money, but also there are plenty of very good journals that provide all of this for free. And so just be aware of that also. That Diamond Open Access Publishing means that there are great journals out there that let you publish in their journal for no cost to you as an author. So then the next question in the Menti, and again, for those of you that are joining late, I think the link is in the chat box, and it's menti.com. And has it changed? Is it working?
Yes, it is.
I don't see anybody in it though, so maybe I've made a mistake there. I don't know if anybody's done that question yet.
Oh, do we need a new code?
Yeah, it looks like it's a new code. That's very inconvenient. Sorry about this.
No, it's fine. I'll just pop that into the chat box as well.
Let me just stop for a moment there and check that I've shared the right code for you. 1 second.
Right, so.
Avoid journals. It's changed number. That's very strange. Okay, so what we'll do instead, I will switch over to Menti because I've already see there are already some really good answers in here. So I'm going to switch over to Menti from PowerPoint, and if I can work out how to do it, share screen, entire screen, and allow. And now you should be able to see my Menti. Right, so we've already got some good thoughts on this. So I wanted to ask you, how can we avoid predatory journals? What do you think? And what we have here? We need to be able to recognize them and know who they are. Yep. We need to know what they look like. Okay, fair enough. We need to check for publication time, peer review time, and publication fee. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Yep, so some due diligence in researching a journal before submitting to them, absolutely. By linking up with experienced researchers to identify appropriate journals for our work, yes. So as an experienced researcher, you should have an idea of what the leading journals or the different levels of journals are in your field, whether they're international journals, whether they're very niche disciplinary journals, or whether they're local journals. I have no idea, that's absolutely fine. Somebody here says, I have a list of predatory journals that we can use to verify each journal if we are unsure about the authenticity of the journal. Okay, there are existing lists, which I'll mention again very shortly. Being vigilant, being more vigilant, yeah. So definitely, as somebody has already said, the due diligence and vigilance in researching a journal, rather than you just see an email from a journal or you've heard the name of a journal. Don't just submit your work there. Do a bit of reading, do a bit of research about on the websites of these journals. Okay, so I'm trying to scroll down. Okay, so due diligence for the journal to gauge their credibility. Check for due diligence and peer review by checking with respected colleagues if they're familiar with the journal. Yeah, so checking how detailed the author guidelines are. Yeah, so there's different things on our journal website to read. There's the author guidelines. There's things such as indexing. It's what the journal also says about itself. Does that look authentic to you? So some good answers there. But also, I'm aware that you're saying you need to know what a predatory journal looks like. So maybe we'll come to that later. Now, this is something that I really wanted to know more from you. What sort of journals does your university tell you you need to publish in? So I've heard lots of different things from different researchers and different institutions. So here's those listed on Scielo, DOAJ, and Scopus. So those are three indexes or platforms that where you can kind of gauge some amount of credibility by the fact that they're on those platforms. Journals indexed in reputable databases like Scopus, Web of Science, AJOL, and EBSCO. Okay, great. Definitely Scopus and Web of Science, accredited with an impact factor. High impact journals, PubMed and Scopus, indexed in reputable databases, and 2 people saying African journals. So that's also great as well. So journals with cheaper ABCs. Okay. Peer-reviewed journals, yeah. So it's interesting that for some researchers, you have to your institution or your supervisor is asking you to publish in particular high-impact journals or journals that are indexed in specific places, but others are saying they just need to publish in an African journal or something called a high-impact journal. So thank you. That's good to kind of get a snapshot of sort of the different ways that you are asked, different places you're asked to publish in. And another question here, so I'm hoping to get some tips in from our more experienced researchers in the group. So what tips do you have on finding a suitable journal? Thinking about field, reputation, readership, and cost. Keywords of my article, searching for a match of journal articles, key arguments, and scope of a journal. Yeah, there is a tool, and I can't remember what it's called now. I'm sure somebody put it in the chat, where you can put the keywords of your article in, and it will tell you the most suitable journals. And I think some publisher journal finders offer that service now. You just put your keywords in to the publisher website, and they help find the right journal for you. Searching from existing index and databases. Check if the journal is published in PubMed. Publication cost and review process, reputation, research where your peers are publishing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and directory of open access journals as well is also a very good tip. So thank you. Some really good ideas and some tips in there. So you've saved me some time in going into some of those. So it's really good to know that that you're on top of this already. So let me go back to my presentation. Hopefully I can speed up a bit so we've got plenty of time to discuss. So knowing the journals in your field has been mentioned is really important. Where do your peers publish? So there's something somebody's already mentioned. There's something sometimes called blacklists, which is an unfortunate title, a list of journals which are known predatory publishers. And there's some quite mixed opinions on this. There used to be something called Beale's List, which is still going. It's continued by an anonymous author. Also something called Predatory Journals, which is anonymous. It's a very, very long list of journals and publishers. There's a paid version of this called Cabell's Predatory Reports, I think it's still called, but you have to pay to access that. Now, I'm not a big fan of this, not a big fan of using lists. I think a better approach is to use established journal indexes, all of which have been mentioned on Menti, which is great. DOAJ, Web of Science, Scopus, PubMed, and AJOL. Somebody has also mentioned know the journals in your discipline. That's exactly what you should do if you're reading a really good article in your field. Look at the reference list, and there you have the names of all the journals, lots of journals that you should be thinking about to publish your research. So indexes. So this is a really important thing to understand. Using journal indexes as a quality marker. So these are what, in my opinion, are the main journal indexes to understand. And firstly, it's important to say a journal doesn't have to be indexed in all of these sources because there's a kind of a hierarchy here. Some of these are really difficult for journals to get into, or some of these indexes aren't very globally diverse. And so if it's indexed in one of these places, that's a good sign. If it's indexed in more than one, that's great. So starting with the Web of Science, which has been mentioned by somebody. It's run by the Clarivate group. It's the official source of the impact factor. And this has a very small number of journals. I say small, I think it's about 14,000. But that's relatively small considering the number of journals there are in the world, which is something like 80,000 or something. So you got the Web of Science is a very high level of publishing. Scopus is also a good indication of high quality credible journals most of the time. And it's a slightly broader number of journals in there also. PubMed has been mentioned, and something called Medline within that, which is for medical journals. It's quite difficult to get indexed for a journal in Medline, so that's a good indicator of quality. You've also got the directory of open access journals, which is very diverse. There are lots of journals in there in the global south, which is great. And they're obviously all open access journals. You can filter in there by journals which have no article processing fee, which is really useful. And of course, African Journals Online, which is another great source of finding the right journals for you as an African researcher. And they have the really great star system so that you can see journals that have passed a quality check by the AJOL team. So that it's important to understand these different indexes and how they can be used to really judge the quality of a journal. There are some journals who aren't indexed in these, which are very new journals or very small niche journals. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you're not in these that you're a predatory journal, but these are a good source if you want to make sure you're finding a really, really good journal. I will briefly mention impact factor because this comes up a lot. And the thing about impact factor is there are predatory journals mention impact factor, mention fake impact factors. So you may be asked to, or you may be recommended to you find a journal with a high impact factor. So this is, I won't go into the mechanics of what impact factor is, but it's a number based on the number of citations of that journal. Only a small number of journals actually have an impact factor. This is only for the really high level prestigious international journals that are indexed by Clarivate. It's an indicator of sort of very high quality and prestige, but it doesn't mean to say that a journal without an impact factor is not a reputable journal. Lots of great journals, great global journals, which do not have an impact factor. But if you do need to publish in an impact factor journal, that journal must be indexed in the Web of Science. It must be indexed in the Web of Science. So there are lots of fake impact factors out there. So if you go to a journal and it says we have impact factor number 7.5 or whatever a good number is, check the Clarivate website to double check that journal is actually listed there. So I'm going to demonstrate this with Drake. So in the top there, this is what you may see on a predatory journal website. You might see a certificate of indexing or certificate of impact factor, and those are very, very rarely genuine. So a certificate for a journal doesn't really mean a lot. Depends who it's signed by, but that's very rarely an indicator of credibility. And what you may also see on predatory journal websites is lots of logos, loads of logos, which they call indexes, which are not really credible or useful. So they might say we're indexed in Google Scholar, for example, and that's not an indication necessarily of quality. There are any journal can get indexed in Google Scholar. It's very, very easy. You might see something like some names that you've never heard of, such as Site Factor, or in this example, you've got ResearchGate. That doesn't have any indication of the quality of the journal. Now down below, this is what you'll find if you put the name of your journal into the master journal list in Clarivate. It will come up and show you it is indexed in the Web of Science collection. So that journal does have an impact factor. So just basically check the website of the journal that you are looking at to follow up on any claims of indexing or impact factor to see if those claims are true or not, because predatory journals are getting very, very clever. Their websites are getting very good. And so using a genuine index like this and making sure that the claims are actually true can be really important. And I want to stress again, even if a journal is not in Web of Science or in Scopus, for example, it can still be an excellent, reputable journal and a great outlet for your research. Right. So read the website, critically examine the website. What are you looking for? Does it carry out rigorous peer review? That can be difficult to know because often peer review is closed, but does it describe its peer review process? Does it charge a fee? And is this fee justified? So if you're paying thousands of dollars to publish, is it indexed in like Scopus or the Web of Science? Some problems here. How does the journal talk about itself? This is something I've talked to researchers who have started reading the journal website, and they actually realize this journal doesn't actually understand my field. It's AI generated content that is put on its website, or it's taken the content from Wikipedia. Does the editorial board look legitimate? So look at the editorial board. Are the people there's a lot of the editorial team, do they look like real researchers? Do they look like people in your field? Do you recognize their names? Does it match the sort of supposed prestige of the journal? And does the publisher look credible? This is also, I guess, a difficult question to answer sometimes if you're quite new to this kind of game of publishing. Are they associated with a well-known academic publisher, or even with a scholarly organization or a university? Who is publishing it, and have you heard of them before? And where are they based? And if they say they're based in the United States, check their address and things like that. So some more quick tips to remember. This is my final slide. Lots of you said that you have received emails, and yeah, Predatory journals spam as many people as possible across all different disciplines with their calls for papers, with very lovely, flowery text asking for your papers. So unless you recognize the sender or you've signed up to a website or a journal or a publisher, do not trust those email invites. Just don't trust them. I would say be skeptical of journals which call themselves international or call themselves global unless they can really justify it. Also be skeptical of journals which have a very, very broad scope, like International Journal of Social Sciences. There are journals with names like that, but if they have a broad scope or they call themselves international, they really need to back that up with excellent service. They need to be indexed. They need to have quite a large editorial board with teams covering different disciplines. So just be extra critical with international journals. Double check the claims of prestigious indexing and impact factors. Just check that that's actually true. Sometimes it can be too good to be true. Read the about page to check that the journal understands your field. Do they sound like they know your field and they know research? Check who is publishing the journal. Are they a credible scholarly organization? And I can give an example of this. I've come across some journals who said that they were based in the UK. They gave an address. I Googled that address and I went onto Google Maps, and that address was a residential house. And so sometimes you can just tell this is not a credible scholarly organization. Or sometimes you look up the address, it's a forwarding address. So sorry, it's a forwarding address. So it's a company that provides forwarding of emails and letters. So just double check everything you can about the publisher if you're unsure. Check your reference lists. Familiarize yourself with journals in your field. So familiarize yourself with what the top journals are, or what the sort of niche smaller journals are in your field, and also what your local journal might be. There are some really great African journals in your field on AJOL, which is worth familiarizing yourself with. I'd much rather you submit to those than a predatory journal. And this is from an article on the Rising Scholars website, which I wrote. So those are just some top tips to finish. So hopefully I've given enough time for Q&A. I did note the question about we need to know what a predatory journal looks like. I think we can discuss that, but I think for me, it's more important to know what a good journal looks like. And I hope I've given some ideas, and also you've given some ideas in the Menti about the fact that a good journal has certain quality indicators. One of those is indexing, one of those is transparency, one of them is they sound like they know about your field. So for me, it's all about really critically examining the journal you're looking to publish in. So that was my quick version of this presentation. I hope I've covered many of the things that you're interested in learning about. But I am very much open to questions now. And so how should we do this? Should we get people to unmute and put up their hands? I haven't worked in Google Meet for a while.
What I think we will do is we'll stick to. We have a question in the chat, and what I will do is I will transfer the questions in the chat to the Q&A.
Okay, great.
And if there is anybody that method doesn't catch, please raise your hand using the hand raise button, and I will unmute you one by one. Also, but to open, we have a question from Kanyi Magubane, which says, what can be done to eradicate the presence of predatory journals? Is there a legal framework available that can be used to criminalize what they are doing?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's going to be really difficult to eradicate this because people are getting very clever at pretending to be a journal. And it's difficult to eradicate them. And I think what the main problem we've got is that this is happening on an international level, and as a group of global researchers that we have here and who I work with on a regular basis, it's very difficult to kind of stamp out these small little startup predatory journals that are in a different country for yourself, and there's no kind of sort of global policy on this that can really do much about it. So it's going to be really difficult. I think maybe AI may play a part in this in the future, where we can provide you with provide you with a lovely tool which will help you to identify good and bad journals. But in the meantime, unfortunately, I think this is something that individual researchers are going to have to sort of judge for themselves. But yeah, it'd be great if there was some kind of legal framework that we could use, but I don't think it's going to be very easy to get the sort of global legal players to kind of put anything into place on that. But I may be wrong. I may be wrong. There may be some people, very clever people, law people, working on this as we speak. It's also important to mention the Committee on Publication Ethics. If there's anybody that's working on this, it's probably them. That's COPE. I'll put that in the chat box, which have lots of great resources on this. They've got some great resources, including a guide on what to do if you've accidentally published in a predatory journal.
Okay, we have a second question from Josephine Wambani, which is, currently we have so many papers being retracted from reputable journals. What's happening? What's lacking? Thank you.
Oh, hi, Josephine. I recognize your name. That's a very good and very big question, which of a meta question about publishing in general. There's a really good website on retraction called Retraction Watch, which does have some really good case studies. I think, does Retraction Watch still exist? If so, can you put the link in the chat box? They got some really good case studies on sort of different circumstances of retractions for different reasons. I think just the pressure to publish, publish or perish, means that lots of people are cutting corners. There you go. There's the link in the chat box, Retraction Watch. so much pressure on people to cut corners in their publications, and sort of create fake images, use AI. I think that the big reason at the moment for, probably the most popular reason for retractions right now, is the use of artificial intelligence, unfortunately. Unfortunately, many researchers think that they can get away with using ChatGPT to write papers. And unfortunately, it's very easy to spot. Well, fortunately, it's very easy to spot that. By humans can spot it. So I think AI is a big reason for this. But you're right to point this out, Josephine, that reputable journals also have their own problems. And there are some very high level journals who have had to retract very high profile papers in recent years. So even if you're looking at an indexed high impact prestigious journal, they're not without their faults. Thank you for mentioning that, Josephine.
So I have what is going to seem like a silly question, but given the enthusiasm in the publishing world for changing to it, do you foresee anything coming? Okay, so predatory journals and publishers exploit authors largely for financial reasons via high APCs. What do you think the effect of the global swing towards diamond, because there's quite a lot of industry initiatives. What do you think that's going to do? And then we have another question after that. Thank you.
I mean, that's a very, very good question, Kylie. I've always been a proponent of diamond open access. And I know there's lots of work being done by lots of really great organizations and people that are trying to build diamond open access, free open access journals. And of course, this is largely in competition with the established academic publishers, and so it's going to be a challenge. And I think the problem I see is that there's so much credibility seen in high impact prestigious journals that the academic publishers own, that it's very difficult to kind of get the word out there that there are thousands and thousands of very good reputable peer-reviewed journals where you don't have to pay a fee. But I don't think that the word is really getting out there to universities and researchers that this is a credible way to go. I don't know quite how to answer that, Kylie. It's a very good question. I think I think there is a movement going towards this, but I think the issue perhaps, of course, is going to be the funding of these journals. So for the diamond open access journals, that to be able to survive and exist, they need funding, resources, and infrastructure. And unfortunately, a lot of the money that's going around is in the commercial open access market, and that's going to be a very big challenge to overcome. I hope that I've tried to answer that in the best way I can.
No, that was perfect. It was a curveball. And we have another one from a Ricky Billington. Why do we call them predatory journals? I think so long as authors publish their work willingly, then the journal is not predatory. I would rather use suitable and unsuitable peer review journals or any other term other than predatory.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, to be honest. I've always been slightly nervous about the expression predatory journals, but because it's stuck, this name has stuck, and so there's a common language about what we're talking about. That's what I've used. But I think the expression, some people have said the expression is quite problematic because, as it happens, a lot of these bad journals do happen to be created in the global south, in Africa and in India. And so what we're saying by calling them predatory is we're saying that in those regions there are sort of unscrupulous publication ethics and practices. And so I am sympathetic to that. And that's just why I think in this presentation I try to focus on what a good journal is, and how we can focus on finding really good and suitable journals. So I would like eventually to stop using the expression predatory journals if we can. So I think that's a really good point.
Awesome sauce. And Madlitso Piri, I am now going to unmute you to ask your question.
Thank you.
Try and unmute.
Come
on.
Yeah,
okay. Awesome.
I was just wondering whether the resources will be made available, like the presentation just for
Yes.
us to have. Yeah.
And the presentation and the recording will both be available probably in a few days' time.
All
Yes.
right. Perfect.
Definitely,
No.
definitely. Yeah, I realise that there's lots of information in there, so we'll certainly.
And will there be another session for colleagues that probably missed the session in future?
Not in 2025. We will preferably have another webinar on the same subject in 2026. But for now, the recording will unfortunately have to suffice.
I'm hoping that I've done a longer version of this presentation before, where we go through some particular examples of on screen share of looking at a good and a bad journal, and it'd be great to do that at some point in next year.
Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
We will book you now. I think it's safe to say.
Okay.
All right. I will email you afterwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, another question from Billington is, how credible are the websites that list the predatory journals, and what measures do they use to judge the journals?
Oh, that's a good question. So I don't want to go back into history, but many years ago, I think this started with a librarian called Jeffrey Beale, and he started this list, and he had his own sort of personal way of judging what a predatory journal was. And I think that it still exists, this list, Beale's list, and it's updated by an anonymous person or anonymous group. And there's a couple of different sources of this. And I think on one of those examples, they do give their own justification of how they decide what a predatory journal is, but because it's anonymous, it's kind of difficult to tell. So I would use with caution. I've always thought they can be quite useful, at least just to kind of check against a list. The paid version of this, which is by Cabell's Predatory Reports, I think they have a very rigorous method that they use to identify predatory journals as well. So yeah, I would treat with caution. If it doesn't say on the list or on the website how they make these decisions, then I would treat them with caution. Yeah.
Right, so 3 more questions in the queue. One from Wallace Mlaga. Thank you for the presentation, but I have a concern on the language versus the reputation of the journal. Do we treat journals written in languages such as Kiswahili, Korean, Russian equally as English, I imagine? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's why we need to think about these issues of sort of indexing and prestige carefully. And you should publish in a journal which reaches the audience that you want to reach, whether that's your sort of peers who speak the same language as you, or if you want to reach the public or policymakers. I think that's the most important thing in reality that you need to think about. So if you're publishing in a journal in your native language, but it's not indexed in very sort of well-known indexes, I think you should put that first. But of course, we know that the universities and the league tables, they want us to publish in the high impact journals. They want us to publish in the prestigious journals. And so it can be quite challenging to balance those things. So it would be great to have more non-English language journals out there, and there to be much more infrastructure to be able to index those and to give them more visibility. But if you are able to publish in those journals, then that so that they've got more some better research and to get more visibility, then that's brilliant. But again, it's another really good question, another really good point, which unfortunately I don't have a lot of experience in, being an English speaker.
Cool. Right, another question from Habtamu Terefe is, how can we reconcile the disparities between long-serving non-open access journals with low impact factors and short-serving open access journals with high impact factors?
Oh, that's a tricky question. These are really good questions. Yeah, I think there are some commercial publishers who have done a very good job of launching open access journals very quickly and getting them out there and building up their reputation and sometimes their impact and impact factors. And there are some well-known open access publishers who I think some people think they've got quite problematic practices. I won't necessarily name them because I'm not sure I'm allowed to, but I think you have to balance these things. You have to balance the sort of understanding these new open access journals and sort of well-established journals, as well as journals that are familiar in your field. Sometimes it can be quite difficult to identify what's a predatory journal, what's a sort of a brand new sort of flashy journal, which is still credible, but some people may have some criticisms of, and a well-known established journal which perhaps doesn't have an impact factor but has a certain amount of kind of prestige. Again, unfortunately, it's critically examining those journals and understanding what's happening in your field in terms of where the best place is to publish for your research. But again, it's a really good question.
So many curveballs. We will have a double session. We'll have a double session with the Q&A next time. And we are coming up on our time limit, so I'm going to ask one last question from Luna Kamau, who's been patiently waiting since 3:54. What is the ethical responsibility of senior academics who are falsely listed on a predatory journal's editorial board? What course of action would you recommend?
Oh, well, that's really difficult. And of course, predatory and sort of low quality journals do like to kind of get credible names on their editorial board. And that's also a practice that we need to be concerned about. Again, it's a difficult thing for us to kind of police. And I'm not sure, as this is an international practice, it's a difficult thing for us to do much about unless we're able to do this in our own country. So I'm not really sure, but I think that's a really important point. There are lots of other practices going on in parallel to predatory publishing, such as unscrupulous practices with editorial boards, with paying for authorship and ghost authorship and things like that we need to be aware of, which it'd be great to spend some more time on, but unfortunately we don't have time today. But no, you're right in identifying that. And but sometimes it is difficult to do much about it. I hope I've done okay in answering your questions. You've all raised some really important points.
It has been fantastic, and this has been a great Q&A. Thank you very, very much. As Ms. Wambani points out, some people listed on these are not even they're not even aware, and it's very unfortunate. I will say to everybody here that I deal with this when assessing journals for indexing on AJOL. I do occasionally come across a case when I contact board members that they have no idea, and they're often quite upset. So I understand that it is an issue that plagues everybody. Right, so thank you very, very much. Ms. Odiambo, I will suggest that you send us an email and or check some of the resources that Mr. Nobes has mentioned today. And on that note, Andy, thank you so much for this webinar. We will see you in 2026, I hope.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the questions.
No, thank you. For that matter, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for this, the last webinar of 2025, and hopefully we see you all again next year. I am going to stop recording shortly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Andy. We will be in touch.
Yep.
Thank you so much for the webinar, and thank you for the good questions, everybody.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.